So, hello, everybody. Let's get rid of that. There we go. So, Denise and I are just like cramming everything in together because we're heading out to Atlanta in a couple of days. Okay, for a conference. So, if you're watching this and you see us at Groomed Atlanta Pet Fair, okay,
Where in Atlanta? Where in Atlanta?
At the Georgia Convention Center.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's one of the nicer trade shows. I mean, I like that. I like the venue. I like everything about it. So, but anyway, we're here to talk about a book.
Not our antics.
Antics are good. Antics are good.
The book is chosen by Denise this week. Everything is FigureOutAble by Marie Forleo. Okay, so well, all right. Let me preface before I would talk about it. And we've had this conversation. So back, what did it say, like 15 years ago, Sacheen? About 15 years ago? About 15 years ago, that was the start of what I like to call commercial coaching. Okay. So you had all these coaches coming out, and everybody's now a life coach, and whatever it is they were teaching, it was the same basic formula. Okay. Now there was two categories. There was like become a life coach for $7. Okay. And then there was the other side of the spectrum. Okay. Whereas they would teach you something, and in my estimation, teach you just enough to get you lost. So you would get something done, but then you couldn't go further. But you could get more coaching and pay them more money. And that was the entire business model for these coaches. All right. Now, Marie Forleo was around at that time. All right. Her thing, though, was her B school, which is her business school. Okay. So a little bit different than what some of the other coaches were. So when you made mention about this book, my first thought went to commercial coaches. My understanding is that in her field, she was actually really good. Okay. But I don't have any personal experience. So then again, I went in with the books thinking, okay, you know what? This is not her lane, but I'm going to read the book or actually listen to the book and see what it is she have to say. Okay. So now that said, because Denise and I have had a conversation about the book and such.
We did.
Have had a conversation about the book. Okay. So part of my problem with some of the self-help books is that they tend to be a little on the trite side. They're regurgitating information from other people, and that's fine and good, right? Because I have read books at the time where it made sense to me because that was the message I needed to hear to move forward. And one of Mel Robbins' books is really one of those books that, yeah, trite, but you know what? It got me past a certain stage that I needed to get past. Okay, that said, I made it about halfway through the book. Okay. And I gave up because I felt the book was very trite, that she was regurgitating a lot of the same information. What I did like about the book is basically the first chapter, which she's talking about her mother. I thought that was really good about her relationship with her mother and what her mother taught her. And I think if the book would have continued in that vein, it would have been a great book. But self-help books make a lot of money. So she just went and did the whole self-help thing rather than taking a really beautiful story and not going in that direction. Okay, I made it about halfway, and the killer for me was, and understand, I have an Audible subscription. I get 24 credits a year. Do you know how many books I've actually returned in the years that I have had this? This was the second one. I actually returned this book. Okay, twice. In the years that I've had Audibles, I don't return books. Even books I dislike, I tend not to return them because you know what? I read the description on them. I knew what I was getting into. So I read it. That was it. I even kept Swedish death cleaning. I did not return. But anyway, so this is where she lost me. All right. One of the things that the commercial coaches we were putting out at the time was, you know what, we all have the same 24 hours in a day, and it doesn't matter what's going on in your life, you will make time for it. Okay. And that's where she really lost me. Okay. Because that isn't true. All right. If you have chronic medical condition, one of those invisible illnesses, I had a father that I had to take care of. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to take care of him in my house, which would have been a lot more of a drain on myself. But I still had to take him to doctor's appointments in the nursing home. And then my husband lost his kidney. He had doctor's appointments, and then he got the transplant, still ended up in the hospital for a month because they nicked an intestine. So there's all these things, and that's like just a handful, and that's just me. All right. And so we don't all have the same 24 hours. You know, if you were a single mom working 2 jobs and you have kids, it's hard sometimes. And so to have someone say, well, you know what, you're not successful because you're not making time, I think that doesn't help. Okay. Maybe instead giving better tools so to help manage, to get people in touch with like um, um, services that could help them. I think that is a better way to help people who are in a period in their time where they can't manage their time. And I literally just taught a class on time management today, by the way. They can't manage their time, to give them the tools to do it. All right. Um, Rather than say, well, you know what, you've got 24 hours. If this is important to you, you will make it work. And I think that is where I had the issue with the book, and I didn't want to read any further with it.
So, am I allowed to chime in? Because I want to say why. I want to say why I picked this book, though. So you had mentioned empowering. So let me backtrack a little bit, and I will most certainly get to that part too. Because Mary and I had this conversation about 2 book clubs ago, and I had just started rereading it. So when I was asked to pick a book, it was about empowerment, not self-help.
Okay.
So that is where I came from, was empowerment, not self-help, because I too I don't follow workbooks. So when I have a book, I want to read the stuff. I don't, unless I'm really looking to change that aspect. I don't care about all the do these little things and you're going to succeed type thing. I personally don't do those. But you told me to pick empowerment. So I did empowerment. For me, it was empowering because it was at a time when I was at an all-time low. I went through a really, really, really deep, dark depression. A lot of personal things going on. I had a lot of people in my life at the time of transition that didn't understand. Like, I had started a business, became sort of my life, but I didn't look at it as a nuisance, where other people did. All came from good. Like, people came from a good place. Denise, you're so much on this, you're not having fun, blah, blah, blah. But that was my fun, actually. So I actually had a lot of people telling me I can't do everything. I went through also a stint where my body, I found out you can have anxiety attacks without having actual mental anxiety. And my body was doing anxiety attacks without me having a mental side. So it didn't make sense how I had people telling me I was doing too much, but that wasn't my thought process. Anyways, so when Mary asked about an empowering book, what I like isn't necessarily, I understand where you're coming from, Mary. I also know that there's a lot of people who fall in the trap of, I had a shit ton on my plate for those 24 hours, but if I really wanted to accomplish something, I really had to figure out how to even make baby steps. But the whole point of the thing is, everything is figure outable. Even if I had to put things on the back burner, knowing that I had to take care of some personal things, even like recently. So I'm really actually glad I reread the book, because I told Mary, I'm like, well, I'm very intrigued to reread the book years later and see where I'm at now. And it actually helped me again, because I had a whole different outlook. And I really like the whole, I love mantras. And I think everything figure outable is a really good mantra for people who feel stuck. So I understand that chapter, because when I got to it, I read it. That is not what I took from that chapter, but we all take things differently. And I think going along farther in the book, there was more things of getting into that everything is figure outable. I think that was the very start of that part. And then throughout the book kept saying other things, that other adversities that was overcome by a different mindset. So I didn't take it for face value. Mine was more of a, do you feel stuck? Yes, it's very simplistic. Do you feel stuck? And sometimes we have to hear that. So for me, picking up the empowering section, sometimes heavy reads are too much or people don't want to do a lot of homework. So for me, it just sort of got me over that. Like, I felt normal when I read this book. I felt, oh, it spoke to me in a way that it didn't have anyone else in my world speaking to me at that time because of a lot of my changes and stuff. So I completely understand. Yes. I don't know. I didn't take it as, I also was a little prepared because I knew how you felt, Mary. And when I got to it, I'm like, I didn't get that from that because I was very intrigued. I was like, oh, I wonder how this is going to go when I get to it. I didn't get that feeling, but I do also understand how that strikes a chord to people. I really do. But I do also think that um, there was other good stuff in there in order to empower you to just make it through. And even though times are tough right now, in the long run, everything is figure outable. And
So
that's what I really liked.
I said, I love the title of the book. I think the,
Mhm.
the title of the book is great. And like I said, I really like that first chapter when she talked about her mother. Right. But this is the thing with this type of book. Okay. Um, when you're reading this type of book, I think it really is very dependent on where you are in your life and whether or not you're going to look at it and go, or say, this is helpful to me. Because I can tell you when we get to a book that we're reviewing by Mel Robbins, I'll go a little bit more into it and why that book really made a difference in my life. But again, it was a trite book, okay, and something that could have been a TED talk, and I think this book could be a TED talk as well. But that's the thing with this type of book. Okay, so Sacheen, what do you think?
Well, I've followed Marie for a while. I used to watch Marie TV, which was her show where she would interview all kinds of interesting people. And so when her book first came out and I heard about it, I'd heard Everything is Figureoutable before because she had said it on her show. So I had high hopes for the book, but I didn't actually get a chance to read it when it first came out. It just slipped off my radar as things to read. So this gave me a chance to actually read the book that I hadn't actually read yet. I did not like it, but I'll tell you why. Um, for me, it was more that there were too many places to apply everything is figureoutable that it didn't fit for me. Um, there are too many there's too much reaching to make it fit every possible place in life where something has stumped you. And that isn't realistic. Everything is not always figure outable in the sense that she's pushing it as figure outable. And so for me, it felt very much like everything is figure outable in a very large sense, sure, but you can't compare you learning to ride your moped in Italy to women suffering in third world countries with shortages. Like that, those two things don't match. And to try to make them match in your book to make that point feels disingenuous to me. Especially because I've heard you talk about these things on the show when I used to watch it, and you didn't make these superficial connections in that way. So the book felt more like I just want to put a book out that I think will get people's attention with this really
Mm.
catchy title and will make me some money, right? Like will bring in some views. It didn't feel like what I had known her to be on her show. And like I get and I agree with Mary in the sense that everyone wants to put out a self-help book because self-help books sell and they make a
Mhm.
lot of money. But if you're going to put out the kind of book that says my philosophy in life is everything is figure outable from a white girl from Jersey or Brooklyn or wherever who lives in the States who vacations in Italy, then please do not equate the same thing to women in India who are trying to feed their families on $2 a day. Like you don't get to do that and pass it off as self-help bubblegum, pop psychology. Like you just don't get to do that and get credibility in my eyes. Because that's not fair to people who are going to read that and go, oh, look, your problem over there is figure outable. Well, maybe, I mean, I'm not saying it's not figure outable, but it's also really bypassing the nuances of living. And for someone who might be struggling with not a third world issue, but maybe just struggling mentally with something or emotionally with something, to think, oh, if I just figure it out, if I just figure it out, if I could just figure it out, maybe you need help, beloved. Maybe it isn't that you can't figure it out. Maybe you need some help, some legitimate, on a therapist's couch kind of help that is not going to get there through this kind of book. So I felt like it's disingenuous. And I appreciate what she is saying, but I felt like there's a lot of pop bubblegum psychology in this book that I really felt for people who follow her were probably like, I don't get why you wrote this. Like, I just don't understand
Mm.
why this was the book that you chose to write out of everything that you could have possibly written about. This just didn't feel, yeah, it just feels like, okay, interesting choice, Marie. Interesting choice. Um, the other
I
piece
had
for
never
me,
seen her. Yeah, I never like really saw her before or anything. I think I picked it up. I don't remember where I picked it up. Maybe the airport or something.
yeah, I didn't, I knew she'd written it because I heard she was talking about it on her show forever, and I just never got around to reading it until now. So thank you for the opportunity to read it because I just never got around to it.
Yeah.
Um, But like I said, I knew her from B school, from her business world. She's an extremely good marketing person. She has some really great ideas about how to market your business and get your business moving. That's why this feels like such a disconnect to me because I'm just
Mm.
like, I don't understand why this and this go together. And so this for me feels less like a mantra that I could use to get to my next best level and more like a money grab in some ways. And not a
Well,
That makes
really,
sense.
yeah.
and I just think like this book could have been a love story to her mother.
It could have been. Yeah, that chapter,
That,
you're right. The
that's
chapter
why
on
I
her
think
mom was amazing.
she should have gone with this book was where she is again. And Sachin brings up a really good point. She grew up, even if she grew up poor in New Jersey, okay, there's still advantages she had there than other parts of the world. All right. Or even for other parts of the country. So I think having that gift from her mother, everything is figure outable, could have been played into how she started B school and the podcast and the TV show. She's done a lot of really good things. Right. So for me, that might have been something. If I was going to write a love story about my father, the title would be, what would be the title? It would be something along the lines, "The Right Tool for the Right Job," because that was embedded in my brain. The from the time I was a kid until growing up, and God forbid, if he asked for a plier and I brought him the wrong plier because he asked for a very specific plier and I should know which plier it is, the right tool for the right job, makes it a whole lot easier. So actually, I should. What do you think, Sashi?
Let's work on one book at a time.
One,
One book at a time. So the story with her mom and the little Tropicana radio, right?
I love that.
When she
I,
tears
I,
it
I know
apart.
exactly what radio she's talking about because I probably had it.
I don't think I had one. But
Yeah.
to your point, and to your point, Denise, when you think about the complexities of figuring something like that out, in your life, that is a building block moment in a story, right? Like that is a moment where you can take the lesson of that moment and really extrapolate it into figuring out the complexities of something that you are not aware of before there was YouTube University, before all of those things that make our lives easier now. This woman at this table in this little suburb, wherever they live, figured out how to put shingles on roofs and like all of that is really powerful. But then she packages it in this weird way that leaves the core messaging of that behind, as if to say everything is easy to figure out because my mom took apart this Tropicana radio, which I think strips her mom of this really great agency. Look how this woman who may not have had the kind of education that we have now sat down to figure out how to navigate through life based on some core principles. The idea that when you can figure things out if you have patience, if you do the homework, if you dig into the mechanisms necessary to make something work. Like if she talked about it from the perspective of a woman who built a business school, it would have been a much stronger message on how to figure things out. And I just feel like she devolved into the pop psychology because that's what sells.
Mm.
That's just my 2.5 cents.
Okay, so overall, I mean, I think we make really good points, and I think it's where you are in your life and whether or not this book will have any meaning for you,
Mhm.
Hmm. As with any book.
as with any book.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, because we usually are all on board on the same take of the book.
Sometimes we're not.
That's why I was excited when Mary was like questioning it. I'm like, no, I like this because usually we're all together and it's really nice to have a little conversation and see how it affects everyone because that's the cool part about reading,
Yeah,
right? Or where you're at in your life. Or like I told Mary, I hadn't read this book for a while. Maybe I'll feel completely different. I can take what I felt back then and felt empowered. And then did it, help me now or did it still resonate with me?
you
So
know,
no, I like it when I like that.
so what I really like about this podcast that we're doing is that I am reading so many more books than I normally, because you look to my own devices, I'm reading a ton of murder mysteries. That's what I'm reading. Okay. So it's nice that I'm looking at other books, and just so everyone knows, for next one, which is on the 22nd, it's a free choice. We're picking a book that we like, and we're going to discuss it. But we have some really upcoming good books that, again, books I would not have chosen. Okay, but I we'll talk about them when we get to them.
We'll talk about them when we get to them. Perfect.
Okay, so any more parting words on everything is figureoutable? I wonder if she trademarked that.
Oh, it's a good question. I don't know.
Hmm.
Did she trademark it?
I don't know.
Oh,
Because that is a nice phrase.
that's a really good question. I don't think
I
so.
I still say it to myself when everything goes to crap at work and I have call offs and I have people and clients and things and I will still sit there and I will inhale and I'm like everything is figure outable. I can handle this because
Well,
they're. So I still use it. I don't know.
so
Sometimes
and
on a
listen,
daily
I think,
basis.
I think it's a really good phrase. All right.
Mhm.
And I've had for a long time. The phrase I always use, I can figure this out.
Right.
All right.
Mhm.
So it's a phrase I've not that particular phrase, but some, variation of it. I can figure this out. All right. And you know what? Sometimes it's just, you know, get frustrated, close the book, give it a day or two, and go back to it. It's a lot of times for me, that's where my insight comes from. All right.
Yeah, I don't know if she could trademark everything as figureoutable because I don't know. I mean, that came out wrong. She probably could trademark it because figureoutable isn't really a word,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and so she probably could have trademarked it.
If the phrase is everything is figure outable, 3 words, she probably could, though it's not as easy to trademark things as it was 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
Mhm.
Absolutely true. All right.
All righty, so that was good, and we'll see everybody on the 22nd when we're back from.
Yes, we'll hear all about groomed.
We'll hear all about groomed, and we'll have free choice. So I already picked out my book.
I keep a stack of books, so it's always easy. I keep a stack.
All right, so we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.